A single low-cost drone under $1,000 is striking deep into the tactical rear, forcing logistics corridors, command posts, and defensive positions to completely alter operations. Right now, across multiple hot zones in Ukraine, we are seeing a dangerous new pattern emerge. Fixed-wing strike drones like the Molniya are no longer experimental concepts. They are deployed at scale, hitting assets 20, 30, or even 50 kilometers behind the line, striking deep into sectors previously considered safe from frontline danger. The threat vector is no longer confined to infantry in the trenches or frontline armor. It now targets supply corridors, tactical command nodes, and staging areas never designed to withstand persistent air attacks from low-cost assets. Once these vital hubs are exposed, the entire logistical backbone supporting the front line begins to fracture. But the tactical situation is shifting rapidly. The Ukrainian military did not just defend against these strikes. They reverse-engineered the threat, building their own long-range variants designed to fly deeper, launch faster, and operate under heavy electronic warfare pressure. Stay on this channel as you and I break down this drone revolution. It highlights a brutal cycle of adaptation, weaponizing enemy innovations into deadlier tools. The crucial question is no longer who possesses the superior technology. It is who can adapt quicker as the tactical reality shifts. Russian forces fielded the Molniya to exploit a specific capability gap, and that deployment is rewriting the rules of engagement deep inside the rear areas. Prior to this mass drone deployment, operations in Ukraine followed a predictable pattern we had analyzed for months. Standard FPV platforms were inexpensive and deadly, but their operational range was restricted to the immediate contact line. Larger military-grade UAVs delivered heavier payloads and flew deeper missions, but their high cost restricted their use to high-value strategic targets. While strategic cruise missiles and heavy strike drones existed, they were too scarce and valuable for routine daily operations. This left a critical tactical vacuum in the middle distance zone. It lay beyond the range of cheap FPV drones, yet rarely contained assets worthy of expending a multi-million-dollar cruise missile. This zone, 20 to 30 kilometers back, became a safe haven where troop rotations, ammo storage, and command operations could run unmolested. As we analyze the battlefield today, the Molniya has completely erased that safety zone. Rather than fielding a complex, expensive system, the Russian military optimized a bare-bones fixed-wing frame, carrying warheads directly into that vulnerable middle-distance sector. The fuselage requires no advanced composites, utilizing basic commercial-grade electronics for guidance and flight control. The true strength is rapid mass production and high-volume deployment, saturating defense networks previously immune to low-cost interdiction. This gives Moscow a highly efficient capability to attrit assets without exhausting their missile inventory. Frontline commanders no longer request artillery support or ration-guided munitions when they can launch cheap loitering munitions directly against supply trucks or tactical operations centers. This persistent aerial harassment has systematically stripped away any illusion of safety in the rear. Fortified positions once deemed secure are now compromised, and rear movements carry extreme risk. The ultimate strategic impact is not a single kinetic strike, but constant operational paralysis. While an attack might not destroy a vehicle or collapse a bunker every single time, the friction forces units to disperse supply nodes and mask their operations, massively increasing security overhead. This logistical drag slows down maneuver operations, creating tactical hesitation that can decisively swing a battle. The Molniya represents a paradigm shift in warfare. It is no longer about fielding exquisite technology, but about deploying good enough attrition systems at a scale that saturates enemy defenses through continuous, relentless combat operations. Ultimately, the tactical value lies not just in target destruction, but in raw operational reach and constant, overwhelming availability. This leaves you and I with a critical question. When cheap tech pushes the strike zone deep without heavy cost, the line between the front and the rear completely vanishes. Safe staging areas are now active combat zones. That tactical shift matters a hell of a lot more than any fancy weapon system. Make no mistake, this is no longer about just one new drone. It is about a brutal layer of pressure that we never faced before, and a fresh threat to airspace that once sat safely beyond simple weapons. The Molnia is lethal not because of advanced technology, but because it brutally solves a frontline problem for dirt cheap. This attack drone is built to strike targets sitting just beyond our artillery line, yet close enough to dictate our daily battle operations. That reach lets it hammer supply, routes, exposed field camps, and tactical command points that lack heavy air defense assets. At the same time, it packs enough high explosives to inflict devastating structural damage, not just a scratch. When you combine this long range and firepower with a dirt-cheap price tag, the threat level spikes far beyond its crude design. It is all about the balance. A weapon like this does not compete with elite missile systems for pinpoint accuracy. Instead, it delivers raw utility. Operators can launch them constantly, guiding them on the fly, at multiple target profiles, maintaining relentless pressure on rear echelon areas that used to operate without any risk. That lethal mix of range, impact, and cost makes it a daily combat staple, not a rare weapon. Even more dangerous is the sheer variety of warheads it deploys. Multiple configurations let operators tailor the strike to the target, multiplying its tactical value. A fragmentation warhead tears through exposed infantry, while a thermobaric option unleashes massive shockwaves inside fortified bunkers. They can even mount anti-tank mines to crush armored vehicles and heavy concrete fortifications. This lethal versatility means one basic airframe handles multiple mission profiles, saving precious time and resources. But this flexibility goes far beyond payloads. This single drone platform shifts roles depending on the gear installed. While some carry out kamikaze strikes, others hunt with high-resolution cameras to harvest critical battlefield intelligence on the fly. This dual-use capability lets our operators switch instantly from reconnaissance to attack, streamlining our logistics and maximizing combat efficiency. The true strategic nightmare unfolds when these strikes are launched relentlessly. One hit is manageable, but round-the-clock bombardment forces enemy units into constant panic. Tactical movement slows down, supply routes are diverted, and critical hours are wasted on defense. Logistics turn into a grinding bottleneck, and field communications break down when no position is safe. Even if individual hits are minor, the compounding toll completely paralyzes their operational planning. We are looking at a radical threat, unlike any conventional weapon. Forget a single knockout blow. The Molnia is designed for total tactical erosion, forcing the enemy to exhaust vital resources on defense, to scramble their high-value assets, and to face the brutal reality that no sector is safe from cheap airstrikes. This psychological friction goes far beyond physical destruction, shattering commander decisions under fire. This strategy is rewriting the rules of drone warfare. These systems are no longer just basic support tools for ground forces. They are now a permanent, terrifying presence dominating the skies, from the trenches to the deep rear. The objective is no longer the single high-value kill, but relentless harassment that paralyzes enemy movement. This is exactly why the Molnia is so lethal, despite its primitive build. It proves that battlefield dominance does not require high-tech, multi-million-dollar platforms. On the modern battlefield, the ultimate weapon is simply the one that gets the job done. And right now, this cheap weapon is exerting massive pressure across the entire front, triggering tactical crises that go far beyond the direct strike. But Ukrainian forces are not just sitting back and trying to shoot them down. Instead, our analysts reverse-engineered the wreckage, tailoring a simplified version to fit frontline combat doctrine. The moment these hostile drones hit the airspace, Ukrainian units recovered downed wreckage for immediate intelligence exploitation. Our tactical engineers stripped down the airframe, mapping out the avionics, and pinpointing critical single points of failure. This was no mere copy job. It was about separating mission-critical components from the systemic flaws that stall operations. Our first major breakthrough targeted structural design. The baseline design relied on cheap materials easy to manufacture, but highly prone to structural failure under heavy combat stress. Ukrainian techs reinforced these joints, upgrading the load-bearing connections. They swapped in ruggedized components to survive extreme thermal shifts and relentless, back-to-back sorties. It is still no high-end weapon, but reliability skyrocketed. That is what matters on a chaotic frontline where launch windows are tight and conditions are never ideal. Next up, was parts standardization. Instead of allowing non-standard, improvised builds to vary based on whatever parts were on hand, engineers standardized all internal wiring and layouts. This allows frontline operators to hot swap damaged sections rapidly, minimizing human error during frantic field assembly. When field repairs are quick and predictable, weapons stay operational longer, driving a faster combat tempo. The massive operational shift, though, lies in the launch sequence. Legacy deployments demanded tight coordination among multiple crew members, leaving a dangerous vector for error under heavy fire or during tight launch windows. Ukrainian forces transitioned to automated launches. Pre-programmed flight coordinates are entered beforehand, letting the system execute takeoff with minimal human intervention. This strips away a layer of tactical complexity, allowing skeleton crews to deploy these systems with maximum confidence. These combat upgrades materialized in a new platform, the Bliskavka. It is not built to sweep the skies with speed or heavy payloads, but to execute its mission reliably under heavy fire. That means rapid weapon prep, fewer launch errors, and mass-scale deployment without the need for elite specialized operator crews. On the ground, this fits a high-attrition war, where time, resources, and troop levels are pushed to the brink. The tactical goal here is clear. Ukraine is not aiming for the most sophisticated drone in theater, but the most dependable asset. A platform that launches without fail, built in steady, massive batches. That is far more valuable than a complex asset that dominates on paper, but fails in the mud. Prioritizing raw reliability over high-tech perfection signals a massive doctrinal shift in how forces deploy technology on the modern battlefield. It also demonstrates the breakneck speed of tactical adaptation. Forget long R&D cycles. Real-time feedback from the front line is integrated into physical hardware updates within days. Consequently, Ukraine stops just absorbing enemy strikes and starts dictating the terms of unmanned warfare. These loitering munitions are no longer just an incoming threat to survive. They are now an offensive asset used in retaliation, heavily modified for local tactical environments and specific frontline sectors. This marks a critical inflection point, proving that technological superiority is not dictated by who invents a weapon first, but by who can optimize and scale it faster under fire. The strategic pivot in this phase is not just about a single drone variant, but how cheap, fixed-wing assets are pushing deep strikes, trading high-end features for sheer volume and combat efficiency. Make no mistake, these are not multi-role assets. They have one clear mission: penetrate medium-range airspace and deliver enough explosive force to shatter enemy field operations. Unlike tactical quadcopters, they cannot hover, pivot on a dime, or track mobile targets once locked on their terminal run. Adverse weather poses a massive threat. Thick fog or severe wind shears will scrub or scrap a mission instantly. Launch timing is absolutely critical. Operators must wait for the exact tactical window before greenlighting. The doctrine holds because this mission profile demands zero tactical flexibility on the fly. Make no mistake, these platforms do not replace close-range precision assets. They occupy a critical gap between short-range tactical strikes and strategic deep penetration assets. At this depth, range and target destruction consistency are far more critical than raw maneuverability. This is where the relay drone enters the fight, serving as a direct extension of combat control. Rather than relying on line-of-sight signals that degrade rapidly, operators utilize airborne relays to push data further. This secure link allows the asset to penetrate deeper while still receiving pilot inputs and transmitting vital telemetry. Our intelligence shows this hardware requires zero complex support, bypassing the massive budget footprint of typical long-range theater assets. We are witnessing a silent expansion of the front. Enemy targets once considered safe from cheap attrition assets are now directly in the crosshairs. We are talking supply lines, rear staging areas, and logistics nodes that remain active around the clock behind friendly lines. With these zones constantly threatened, the boundary between the front line and the rear is completely erased. To understand this impact, look at operational roles rather than pure specs. A heavy multi-rotor can hover, course correct, and fly back to base for refurbishment, but it demands highly trained operators, secure launch pads, and high-dollar logistics. That hardware is highly lethal, but commanders cannot deploy it lightly given the staggering unit costs. In stark contrast, a cheap fixed-wing strike platform acts as a basic one-way munition. A two-man team can rapidly prep and launch it from any clearing with zero footprint. Its mission profile is clear, penetrate, detonate, and exert constant kinetic pressure at distances previously safe from low-cost attacks. At this scale, sheer operational volume outclasses single-platform performance. One strike is a nuisance, but a relentless barrage of them forces the adversary into constant chaos. Make no mistake, we are not looking at air-to-air dogfighters here. They are strictly surface attack assets, meaning defensive escorts must be handled by external air defense. This draws a hard tactical line between pure offensive weaponry and defensive countermeasures, forcing both sides to engineer complex, multi-layered solutions. This shift raises a critical tactical question about where this conflict is heading. If commanders can extend strike ranges with low-cost assets and deploy them on mass scales without draining our war chest, then the traditional concept of distance is dead. Safe zones deep behind the line will be targeted with brutal regularity. Kyiv's tactical response to this growing aerial threat is not built around one silver bullet, but on a layered, integrated defense structure designed to keep troops alive under fire. The initial layer acts as early warning, optimizing route planning long before launch. Units are strictly forbidden from traversing exposed corridors without reconnaissance assets active, mapping out sectors with the highest threat density. This demands tracking previous strike coordinates, plotting enemy flight paths, and timing movements to minimize exposure. Field maneuvers are now highly calculated operations, not routine runs. Tactical electronic warfare acts as our primary shield, scrambling signals before threats breach the perimeter. By jamming uplink frequencies, we slash enemy accuracy or force their guidance systems to fail entirely. It is not a perfect shield, but it injects chaos into the targeting process, causing the incoming munition to veer off course. Should a threat break through, it enters the kill zones of dedicated mobile air defense teams. These troops are drilled to track and engage low-altitude threats with modified weaponry. They provide our final, raw kinetic response when electronic warfare fails to drop the target. This human element injects split-second flexibility right when a combat decision saves lives. Yet beyond kinetic fires, passive physical hardening has redefined our entire defensive posture. Main supply routes, logistical corridors, and forward command posts are cloaked in heavy netting to snag incoming suicide drones. These countermeasures look basic, but the tactical impact is massive. Any low-altitude hostile drone now faces a physical barrier grid, severely degrading its chances of hitting the target. Even if a strike breaks through, the damage is heavily mitigated. Over time, these physical fortifications force the enemy to rewrite their attack plans and rethink target selection entirely. Now, deployed interceptor drones provide a lethal, active countermeasure directly in the sky. These killer drones intercept incoming threats long before they can threaten assets on the ground, using kinetic impacts or high-explosive disruption charges. The low-altitude airspace has become a brutal, contested combat zone rather than a defenseless shooting gallery. When integrated, these defensive layers form a highly coordinated, continuous shield rather than isolated, desperate tactical measures. Every component boosts the probability of neutralizing hostile threats, creating a highly resilient grid engineered to withstand sustained saturation attacks. If one line fails, the next catches the threat, making defense incredibly resilient. This system does more than protect it, is actively forcing a shift in operational doctrine. Tactical movement grinds to a crawl to avoid detection. Logistics routes are complex, requiring meticulous coordination. Operations that once took minutes now drag on for hours, with every maneuver weighed against potential drone strikes. This constant friction degrades enemy capabilities on the front line without firing a single artillery shell. On a strategic level, the entire battle space is undergoing reorganization. Critical infrastructure is heavily hardened, and unit dispersion is optimized to mitigate the lethal aerial threat. The line between the rear and the front line is completely gone. Lethal strikes now hit targets deep in formerly secure sectors. Our intelligence confirms that Ukraine is building far more than simple defensive measures. As this air defense grid evolves, it forces a vital question on the future of warfare. If survival requires continuous layered adaptation over silver bullet weapons, then strategic dominance belongs to whichever side can maintain their technological edge under unrelenting combat stress. What we are monitoring on the front lines seems incremental, but it is fundamentally rewriting the laws of near-peer conflict before our very eyes. A cheap commercial drone costing less than one artillery round is penetrating deep into strategic rear areas once deemed highly secure, forcing commanders on both sides to completely overhaul maneuver, concealment, and engagement tactics. Russian forces initially filled their capabilities gap with a mass-produced, simple solution. Ukrainian forces analyzed the threat, engineered countermeasures, and improved the design, integrating it into a dual-use tactical network for simultaneous strike and defense. Today, battles are no longer won by raw firepower alone. Victory is determined by the rapid cycle of learning, adapting, and deploying next-generation tech to the front. Every tactical innovation triggers an immediate countermeasure, fueling a relentless, high-stakes arms race. If these inexpensive, scalable weapon systems keep extending their lethal operational range, then the decisive advantage belongs to the combatant that can out-innovate the enemy under constant fire. Can this frantic adaptation cycle accelerate further, or will one military force develop the technology to shut it down completely? Analyze this with me in the comments. And to track how this high-tech conflict unfolds in real time, like, share, and subscribe to Military Force.